Morning, everyone. Welcome to another daily devotional. As we come to the end of this week, we move from the first table of the law to the second table of the law. Traditionally, theologians have divided the Ten Commandments into the first four and then the last six. The first four have to do with God and our attitude towards Him and how we're to behave in respect of Him. The second table of the law, which begins at Commandment 5 and runs through to Commandment 10, has to do with our attitude towards and our behaviour with respect to one another, with our fellow human beings. And it's vitally important, of course, that we not only have a right attitude towards God, but that we also have a right attitude towards one another. God has given us a blueprint as to how we are to conduct ourselves in our relationships to Him and in relationship to one another. It's interesting that when you come to the second part of the Ten Commandments, the second table of the law, God begins by dealing with families. Of course, throughout Scripture, God gives us much more details on how to conduct family life. For example, He gives us instructions in Paul's letters with regards to husbands and wives, and mothers and fathers and children. He also gives us many commandments that are in the law with regards to the punishments that are to be given for those who disobey the relationships of family life. Part of the commandments that God has given us in relation to our families, in fact, a commandment that is absolutely foundational to family life, is found in the fifth commandment. In Exodus 20 and verse 12, God says this: "Honour thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land in which the Lord thy God giveth thee." It's interesting when you look at the final six commands, which have to do with how we conduct ourselves in respect of others. If we were to put these in order of what we thought to be the most important or the most significant, we most certainly would not, I'm sure, have begun with this one about children obeying their parents or honouring their parents as being the most important. It wouldn't have been first on the list, so to speak. After all, we would probably think not to kill somebody is more important than this, not to steal, not to tell lies, not to commit adultery, not to covet. And yet, here we find that the first of the six commandments that deal with our treatment of other people has to do with attitudes towards parents and behaviour with respect to them. Why is that? Well, let's think about it for a moment for today's meditation. When we realise what the Bible teaches about sin, sin is the transgression of the law. Law is given by those who are in authority over us. So, for example, in society, our government makes the laws. They are in authority over us. And the law having been made, we have a duty to obey the law. Where does a person first encounter law? Where do they first encounter authority and rules? Well, they do so, of course, in the home. A child first encounters authority in the persons of his parents or her parents, the mother and the father. It's the mother and father who say, "Don't do that. No, you're not allowed to do that." It's the mother and father who exercise authority in the home. And when authority in the home is undermined, when a child rebels against his parents' authority, you can be sure that such a child will go on to rebel against all kinds of authority. It's interesting that in the days in which we live, where we have seen the disintegration of the traditional family unit and where many families are falling apart, that is having a knock-on effect in our societies. We see authority being undermined. We see laws being broken. You see that in the classroom, for example, where teachers struggle to exercise authority over pupils, and pupils are more interested in what they regard as their rights than in submitting to the teacher's authority. You see it in society, where laws are drawn up, but they certainly aren't obeyed. Even in the latest coronavirus crisis, you can see that laws are established, for example, having to wear face masks whenever you go in to do shopping, and everyone having to do it except those who are exempt. And yet, like me, I'm sure you've gone into shops and you've seen many people walking around without face masks on. There's just something in us that resents authority and that disobeys authority. And here, in this second part of God's law, God establishes the fact that submission to authority is something that is learned in the home, is to be demonstrated in the home, and is to be implemented in the home. It's so important that children are brought up to respect the authority of their parents. Whenever that goes out the window, whenever that's abandoned, often those children will grow up to be rebellious against all kinds of authority. And so what I want to emphasize this morning is the importance of this commandment. It isn't just about children going to bed whenever mummy tells them or doing their homework whenever they're told. It's the respecting of authority. Where do we see that first? We see it in the home. May God help us to work these things through. Have a good day.